Transition Tuesday. I'm Jane. This is Joe. So, last year of school, instead of our annual IEP meeting, we will be having a summary of performance meeting. That is basically like your discharge from services. So I originally told Joe's teacher, his case manager, that I was very sad about this meeting and that they should just have the meeting without me. Honestly, I'm telling you guys the truth. See how pitiful and sad that is? And it is kind of a sad milestone to reach. But I also started thinking about, what you manifest. When you think things, you manifest them. And I really want Joe to have a great life after school. And so I really had to have a little talk with myself about how to look at this summary of performance meeting and what we do going forward in a different way. Can I find positives? Can I find hopes and dreams? Can I find happiness in this idea of Joe's summary of performance meeting and what's going to happen beyond? So I want to take a little bit of time to first explain what a summary of performance document is. So state performance indicators. These are the sort of measurements that our Georgia school districts use to determine if there is any progress being made on educational system-wide, Georgia-wide goals in education. Indicator 14 is about post-school outcomes, looking at those students who are enrolled in higher education courses, students with disabilities who have IEPs specifically, how many of those students are enrolled in higher education programs or are gainfully employed or who are in post-secondary programs. In other words, Georgia schools measure the number of special education students who go on to do other things after they've received their base educational supports and services from school. This is an important measure of how well Georgia schools have taught basic skills, both academic and life functional, to their special ed students. It's an important measure. IDEA, which is the federal laws around special education and a student with disabilities' rights to get an education, say students who graduate or age out, which means they've turned the age where the school district no longer has a responsibility to provide services. In Georgia, that means the semester of a student's 22nd birthday. Summary of academic achievement, functional performance, and post-secondary recommendations and goals. So this is the responsibility of a school district when a student reaches that point where they are no longer going to be eligible for school services. This is important for many reasons. The document, the summary of performance document, and this is really what turned my thinking around, what is very important because it establishes eligibility for programs. So if you are a student with a disability who is pursuing higher education and you might need some accommodations from the Disability Services Center at the particular institution you're going to, that isn't just handed to you. You have to be able to prove that you received accommodations in school relating to your disability to help you function in an education setting. So that could be smaller class sizes. It could be use of assistive technology. It could be more time on tests. It could be other testing accommodations. If you, as a college student with a disability, want to continue using those tools, your summary of performance document will include those criteria for accommodations that establish eligibility. So you're going to take that piece of paper to the Disability Resources Center of that higher education program to establish your eligibility. Very important. That document will also work for other post-secondary programs, such as an inclusive post-secondary program at a participating college. It will be useful for technical schools. It will be useful for rehabilitation programs like Warm Springs or any kind of voc rehab program. It will be useful for the kind of program for day services that Joe will be going to once it is open and operating. Obviously, our dog is very excited about all of this conversation. She's just running back and forth in the background. So it's establishing eligibility. So that puts a whole different light on this document in my eyes now. I see that it's just as important as an IEP or individualized education plan, which is what you do every year while you're in school. That's the document that demonstrates the need for education the need for special education services, how those services will be delivered, and what the goals are for that particular student. Well, these are all the tools that this student qualified for. And now the cat just jumped on the table, and that's why the camera shook. The pets are crazy today. Post-secondary goals. The summary of performance document also considers post-secondary goals. What kind of service goals, growth goals, functional goals will this person need after they leave school? The SOP, Summary of Performance, takes the data and IEP and translates it into a document to guide post-secondary services. So if you look at it that way, then when we prep for this meeting, we're going to be looking at this as sort of a roadmap for whoever is providing services for Joe after school. That is a whole lot different mindset than thinking, oh, this is just a formality that we have to go through and it doesn't mean anything anyway, and I'm so depressed. I mean, which feels better coming out of my mouth? Definitely the first one. So it looks like your final year of school, and these are the people who should be sitting at that table. Of course, the student is the center of the hub of the wheel. The IEP team, well, they know him. They've been serving him for over 12 years, like 14 or 15 years. So his IEP team is a part of that wheel. Family. Well, because frankly, we'll be the ones who are guiding Joe's post-secondary journey, particularly since with Joe's level of challenges from his disability, he'll still be living at home, and I will basically be his case manager. So yes, family. And then agencies. What agencies are going to be supporting Joe? Why not invite them to the table? Why not let them meet the IEP team and ask questions about what helps Joe function in a setting? What worked? What didn't work? What have you tried? Why not extend that conversation forward to the people who will be serving Joe later? Now, for kids who are going to a higher education program, this is probably, not functional because of the rules around colleges, don't include parents in the meetings the way you do when you're in school. There's a lot of reasons why that might not be functional. So including the agencies is more about the students who are going to go on to more of a disability related program. Present level of performance. So when you're in an IEP meeting, this is all about how the student is performing in school, academic and functional skills. This is the blueprint in a summary performance section for the people who are going to be providing services in the future. So it's important for the parents or whoever is guiding this person to read that part of the document, understand Joe's academic and functional level, and use that again as the blueprint for future services. Then there's a section for recommendations from the current IEP team. What has worked to help this student function? Wouldn't you want advice, especially for someone like Joe who has such challenges with communication? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to get questions to ask him or to understand how Joe communicates from somebody who's been doing that with him for several years? The other nice thing about that is it would lend itself to some continuity of the process. So Joe's teachers functionally could help the new agency staff understand what Joe does on a typical day and how they respond to it. What kind of equipment do they use? In Joe's case, they use a lift, they use a stander, they have facilities for him to take care of his personal hygiene and supports. They can talk about all those things and make recommendations. Now, does that guarantee that in the new program that's going to be exactly the same? No, because people change. What Joe needed in elementary school, he didn't need in high school anymore. But it gives you a place to start at the ground and build up. Accommodations. We kind of already talked about that. So with accommodations, what has worked for this person? What will they need? Self-determination. Student expresses strengths and goals. So this is so important, and we talk about this all the time on Transition Tuesday with Jane and Joe. I want Joe to be able to control and define what works for him. Nonverbal people can do this just as well as verbal people. Not to, bring this down, because Joe definitely is a very smart young man. But Do you know when your pets are hungry? You do. Why is that? Because they're using nonverbal communication to let you know what you need, what they need. So Joe needs from the very beginning to be able to demonstrate and communicate his wants and needs, his likes, his dislikes, his excitement, his disappointment. He has every right in the world as a functioning adult out in the world getting program services which we are paying for. Yes, it's through our comp waiver, but we're paying customers for these services. And Joe deserves to get everything he's entitled to, everything he needs, and yes, what he wants. Who will serve the student? Who will serve his needs? That is included in the summary of performance document. So it's on paper. There are several reasons for this. For one reason, the school system has a responsibility to follow Joe's post-secondary planning so that it goes back to reporting on that indicator 14 for the state of Georgia. How well has the school done with Joe's transition planning goals in his IEP? The school's going to track that. So it's in the summary of performance document because the school's going to follow up and say, oh, did he go to a day service program? Did he get a job? Did he get any additional education services? So, looking at all of this, I hope I've given you kind of an understanding of what this document is and why it might be more important than I first thought it was. I think the best way to summarize it is the end is the beginning. So we might let you experience some of our summary of performance meeting. I don't know yet. We have to talk about that. Joe, are you ready to be done with school? Are you ready to move on to the next phase of your life? Touch my hand or tell me with your voice. Are you ready? Do you feel a little nervous or anxious about that? Do you feel a little nervous or anxious about school being over? Do you prefer not to answer any questions about this right now? Touch my hand or tell me with your voice. Where are you today? What are you thinking about? Do you prefer not to answer this question? Yes. That's kind of how it's been with Joe. So next week, we're going to talk about how to plan for what's next. So we hope you'll join us. We hope this has been helpful for you, and we'll see you next time.